So in this video I'm going to tell you what it's like to build e-commerce companies moving from Ireland and the West to Bali, Indonesia. Context, I'm a 7-figure entrepreneur. I own a company that sells the products, i.e. building brands, and I own an agency that advertises clients' products. In this video I'm going to talk about why I ended up or how I ended up in Bali in Indonesia. What makes Bali so great as far as lifestyle, cost of living. Contrarily, what are the negatives, particularly running e-commerce companies from Southeast Asia? And what are the negatives in general living in Southeast Asia compared to, say, Ireland or the West? I'll talk a little bit about the structure, lifestyle, the setup here, and also what are some things you should consider if you are considering moving to Southeast Asia or Bali, Indonesia. So to understand the reality of building on the ground in Bali, coming from Ireland, I'm going to run through a few things here and so this makes sense. Firstly, the laptop on the beach thing, I think everyone kind of has this idea before you go abroad or go somewhere like Thailand or Bali that is a thing. I've even seen people put up photos of this, but it's not really a thing, I don't think, because one, if you're on the beach on a laptop, the heat is just going to be too much. It's just ridiculous. The reason I actually came to Bali or ended up in Bali, first in Thailand, was to visit suppliers. So basically me being me, when I'm getting into this, I don't just want to be like dropship, transactional, make some money. I want to actually learn the craft of business. I want to deepen the relationships, because we all know what it's like when you have a deep relationship or meaningful relationships. The wins are so much better. The challenges are doable. Everything seems much more better. Basically, it's just a much more positive experience. So to me, when I had the option of coming out here to meet suppliers and coming to Bali, there was only one thing that was going to happen, and that was it. So that's why I am in Bali. Originally, I was in Thailand. So I moved out to Asia 6 years ago. I was in Thailand, Bali kind of on and off, but ultimately Bali is, to me, the best place to be. And that was through meeting suppliers originally here in Indonesia. Now, there's a huge amount of upsides from living in Bali. There is some drawbacks as well. But the first thing is the lifestyle. So if you're an entrepreneur or a freelancer, there is a big fitness sort of health-centric community here. Lots of gyms, lots of amazing cafes and food and restaurants and bars. So the lifestyle is pretty sick. And if you're anything like me or have that drive, that often spills over into like health and fitness as well. So you will have access to that here. I believe Thailand is the same, but not to the extreme. Or I know Thailand is the same, but not to the same extremes. There is kind of this bubble of health and fitness here in Bali that you will not find in many other places, even in Asia. So definitely worth experiencing, even just to try out. And often that's what happens, and people end up not leaving then. So lifestyle is pretty incredible. Obviously Bali is one of the top tourist destinations in the world. So you're getting access to some of the best restaurants, some of the best hotels and resorts, which is great, because even when you're not working, you have access to all that stuff on the weekends. It's fairly close by. So that's one of the reasons I love it as well, is when I want to go to, let's say, a lovely resort not too far from here, have a coffee, have some food, easy peasy. And then when I want to lock in and work, I have a good setup here in the villa as well. Now, things can be a lot cheaper, cost of living. You're looking at probably a 2-bedroom villa in Bali now. You probably get 15,000 US. Nice villa, maybe even 12,000 US. You do need to look to find out. Some Facebook groups and stuff are good. People are always talking about how Bali's property market has increased, and it has increased, but that's because the place is so good, and it's still a hell of a big difference between that. Let's say where I'm from, Dublin or Ireland or the West, there is still so much value in terms of, if you like, I'm sure you could get a 1-bedroom apartment, maybe 500 or 600. In fact, I'm sure I know, because apartments have opened up nearby to me, literally in the same area across the road, basically. So yeah, €500 a month. 1-bedroom apartment, shared pool, great location. This is very achievable in Bali, also very achievable in Thailand too. And that is probably your number one expense. Everything else can be fairly cheap. As I said, you've got the 5-star resorts and stuff, so you want to spend money, you can. But you can also live with a pretty good standard of living for not too much money as well. I don't know, if I had to guess, maybe 1,500, maybe 2K. You could make it work, I would imagine. But again, if you're anything like me, you're looking for a place to build, so that might be the starting point, but it's certainly not the end point. Now, obviously, the minimum wage here in Indonesia in general, in Bali specifically as well, is probably about €250 a month, maybe a little bit less. The reason I mentioned this, rightly or wrongly, is just so you can understand the economy here. You know, things like getting deliveries, any repairs, any manual labor, cleaning, all of these things come a hell of a lot cheaper than they would be in the West. Obviously, these are a lot more expensive there. So that's probably why they're like food and haircuts and all this stuff can be a lot cheaper here, is because the cost of labor is a lot lower, just the way it is in a more developing country. And something to be not taken for granted is, it can be a lot cheaper as far as living. So big one alongside this, obviously that kind of removes a lot of the stress, great lifestyle, lower cost of living. You get a big creativity boost, you know. Obviously less stress. You cannot be like creative and trying things out and experimenting if you're highly stressed. Do you know what I mean? Now, if you remove that stress, that creativity will come. You have a little bit of a foundation built. You've got, let's say, the weather, which is obviously a big thing. Me coming from Dublin in Ireland, the weather here is obviously incredible. Something like 25 degrees at night, maybe 32, 33 during the day. Pretty much all year round, barring rain. That can be affected. But it's very different than Ireland, where you'd have like 4 different seasons of clothing, whether it's winter or spring or summer, if you get a summer at all. Whereas here, like in Asia in general, it's kind of like you've got one season's clothes and then that's basically it. So it's pretty cool like that. Time zone advantages, obviously building e-commerce companies out in Asia. If you're dealing with China, if you're dealing with Asia, which I know obviously most of the world is, the time zone advantage is big. You can have multiple back and forths with suppliers during the day. Or if you've got clients in Asia as well, multiple back and forth conversations during the day. Versus if I'm dealing with maybe USA or Europe, that might not be the case. You know, so there is advantages to being out here, and you're not really affected as far as the e-commerce running of the business. If you're selling the products, which one of my company's time zone doesn't really matter, you know, so to speak, because once you get up and set up and running with your products and brand, I should say, then it's a case of it will run during the night, it will run 24/7, so it doesn't really matter as far as that. There's probably not many advantages, actually time zone advantages as well with the agency, is if you've got a global team. So obviously a lot of software engineers come from India, they're basically all of Silicon Valley. Philippines has a lot of staff as well, a lot of good talent. You need to know how to find them, but that's another day's story. But it's all easily accessible here when you're living in Asia, because it's very similar time zones, Hong Kong, Singapore time, which is pretty good, pretty advantageous, and big benefit of being out here in Bali, but in Southeast Asia in general. Now there is challenges, there is negatives to this as well, and one of the negatives is obviously healthcare. Now I'm talking specifically about probably Indonesia here, and I'm pretty lucky in that I've actually had surgeries here in Indonesia and everything's been good, so I don't have a huge gripe with it, but you've got to be objective about these things. A lot of Indonesians actually travel to Malaysia, travel to Singapore to get healthcare, because it's just a lot better there. The only thing I can put this down to is because Indonesia does not have foreign doctors. Now, I'm not saying that Indonesian healthcare should be flooded with foreign doctors. I'm sure Indonesians would probably say there's enough foreigners as it is. But it's just more from a competitive standpoint. Like, if you up the level in terms of competition, Indonesian doctors will get better as well. You know, without that, it can be lacking a little bit. But you do have great access to Malaysia, to Thailand, to Singapore. Malaysia and Thailand, really good healthcare. It's pretty cheap as well. Now, me obviously come from Ireland. Healthcare is basically free. Everything is more expensive than free, of course. But you get really good service out here. I go to Kuala Lumpur every year, pay probably $200 euro, maybe $250 actually a little bit less than that, and get the full A to Z. Blood tests, ECG, on a treadmill, so like stress test running on a treadmill and stuff, so kind of like cardiovascular fitness as well, which is just great, and x-rays and USG, everything kind of included in that. So there is big benefits in that. As I said, it's like €200, maybe $230 US dollars. So definitely still very cheap for what you're getting. And as I said, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, obviously really high standard of care. It would be comparable to the West, to Ireland, the UK. I'm not 100% certain on, it would obviously be comparable to America as well. But America is very expensive. A lot of doctors I've found in Malaysia in particular are actually trained in like Ireland and the UK, etc. So you're getting that standard of care. It just happened to be a lot cheaper or not that expensive. So healthcare is one thing. But I think the best thing to do here, and this is what I didn't do at the start, I didn't have insurance. So I actually had a couple of surgeries here that were cash in hand. And but I would recommend getting insurance, maybe $1,000 if you're moving out this way. $1,000 will get you covered all over Asia. So anything goes wrong, which can happen, you're going to be covered, broken bones, etc. like that. So well worth it for peace of mind, I would suggest. But I didn't at the start, ultimately. Traffic. So look, Bali is the tourist centres of like lots of gyms, lots of bars, lots of restaurants, lots of great cafes. Ultimately, outside, maybe 20 minutes outside of that, is kind of jungle and rice paddies. So you can imagine that those tourist centres get quite busy, particularly around lunchtime or evening time, 5-6 o'clock, rush hour. I'm not really affected by that, to be honest. Everything is pretty close by. And also I just would not be, I'd kind of avoid those times. But even then, like when I think about it, I've got stuck in traffic maybe once or twice a year, I'm talking about like gridlock traffic. Outside of that, everything is pretty easy going and takes maybe 10 minutes, 5 minutes to get anywhere. Compared to, let's say, Ireland, like driving somewhere that's a long time would be basically like 1 hour. Where like people might drive to, I don't know, the city centre or to a golf club or whatever. Here, like 10 minutes is kind of a lot because everything's pretty close. So you get spoiled in that there is things that are a lot closer, So running an e-commerce company itself, as I said, I own a company that sells the products. I own a company that basically helps clients sell their products through advertising. So let's deal with one at a time. So if you are selling the products, the challenges, look, imports into Indonesia are a little bit trickier, I used to order, for example, clothes off ASOS. I used to order a lot of clothes, maybe thousands of dollars worth. I used to end up paying about 40 or 50% in customs, so that was not ideal. It can take a little bit of time to get through customs and stuff. Also, it's like the customs here is generally, because it's a protectionist country, they don't want a lot of imports. It's generally just a little bit harder. And it usually gets, I haven't had anything not get through, but ultimately you're going to have to pay customs on it. So if you're importing samples and things like this, can be a little bit tricky, but it can be done, basically. Now, the agency, like even client service in general, the challenges about being an Asia client service. Obviously, we have clients all over. So we have clients in Australia, Asia, Germany, UK, many parts of Europe, America. Obviously, Europe, like German time or Central Europe time, 9 a.m. is probably about 3 p.m. our time. So that's pretty good. It's totally fine. Obviously, UK and Ireland is very similar as well. So totally doable as far as client service. Now, when we look at the America side, I'm going to say roughly 12 hours. So, for example, client might be 9 p.m. their time and it will be 9 a.m. your time. So it's doable. And obviously, the opposite goes as well. It's very doable. But yeah, it's a little bit different as far as the time zone. Something to be cognizant of depending on your exact situation. There is some limitations as far as time zone. But I have not found any that have been, I was about to say critical, that's the word, any that have like made business stop in any way manageable, So the next thing here is discipline and distraction. So look, when you come out to Asia, there's obviously, as I said, whether it's Thailand or Bali or even the Philippines or anywhere like that, there's a lot of cool things to see and do, and you should do those. But there's also distractions as well, obviously bars, and you get FOMO and women as well. Now, when I came out here, it was a case of getting business done, and I've always felt like I've had really good sovereignty over my day-to-day and what I do. So it hasn't been a big, of course, we've all had our moments, but it hasn't been a huge impact to me. And obviously as an entrepreneur, that's probably one of the main things you're trying to develop anyway, is your sovereignty over your day-to-day and what you do, etc. So you might not have any issues here, whereas people on vacation and stuff, obviously it's very difficult to avoid those distractions. Now, this leads into like how I structure my life and work here. So I work pretty much probably 5 days a week, 6 days. Again, with the caveat that if I want to take time off, I take it. You know, if there's things on or I want to train, I just do it. I live with my brother as well, my younger brother. He's also working in the business. And we train, well, I train Muay Thai 2 or 3 days a week. I go to the gym, lift weights 2 or 3 days, run, cycle. He's more like Muay Thai 6 days a week. But we can do that like, we do that in the villa sometimes as well. We have like a home gym, or we do it out of the villa, you know. Obviously he does it in group classes and stuff. Alongside that, as far as the structure, like obviously as I mentioned earlier, like we have staff as well, whether it's a gardener or chef or housekeeper. So like food and groceries and laundry and all this is taken care of, which is a big benefit as an entrepreneur, is to be able to focus your attention and have the stress come from the business, basically, as opposed to stress coming from your personal life. This is a huge win and something that is very affordable. I mean, in Ireland, you're probably looking at, for a chef and a housekeeper or a gardener, probably €100,000 all in. Just not that case here, as I said. The cost of labour is just magnitudes less. So these can be a big benefit, whether in Thailand or Philippines or Indonesia, wherever it might be in Asia. It's pretty incredible, you know. So I might wake up every morning, like I'll always go get a coffee, come back, so walk about 20 minutes, get a coffee, come back, work for a few hours, then train Muay Thai late morning, have the coach come out here, have lunch prepared then ready for when I finish, and then do a few more hours of work in the afternoon. Before then, evenings usually chill out, see some friends, get some dinner and stuff. So it's really nice setup, and something that is very possible, something that I've engineered over obviously many years, you know. So that's an idea of what the structure of work and life here might be, and something that works really well for me. Obviously, one big benefit as well is like doctors, as I talked about, like it's very cheap to get. I have visited the clinics at times, but most of the time I get doctors come out to me, do blood tests and stuff in my villa. It might be like $10, $20 extra to have them come to you, which can be preferable, particularly if there's situations where you are sick. It's just not possible to go to a clinic. So getting sick and then having people come out to you, like doctors and nurses and stuff, is very manageable, very easy and not expensive. So it's a huge benefit to living in Asia in general. I'm not sure exactly in Thailand. I'd imagine it's very similar, and the Philippines, just based on what I know in culture. I've obviously been there. I lived in Thailand for a while. But these are massive wins, you know. It's things you don't need to worry about. So my advice basically for founders or freelancers, people thinking of moving out to Bali, whether that's e-commerce or client service or any other business, to me, I basically was going to come on vacation to Thailand. And when I booked that, and kind of, I don't know if that was the universe or what it was, for a 2-month vacation, and the business started going really well. And then by the time I was actually going to Asia, it was a case of like, there was a good chance that I would have the option to stay out here, which I did, stay out in Asia. And very lucky to do that. What I would suggest, and I see, because I talk to a lot of younger people and people getting started in business, is have something going, because when you get out here, as I said, there is distractions, you need some discipline. So at least being set on what you're doing, have some cash flow coming in. Again, does it have to be something that is like crazy amount of money? No. Maybe that is 2K, 2.5K a month is possible, at least if you're starting. And then at least you can basically get to work on making that grow and scaling that up, as opposed to coming out here with no idea and trying to figure it out here. Everyone has a different business and everyone's doing different things. You're going to get heavily distracted, and you do need to have that kind of true line where you're going, and that is going to be best fit if it's decided by you, and if that seed is starting to blossom, so you can just continue to water that, is a big thing. So to me, Bali as an e-commerce base, I think it's fantastic, wonderful, for a lot of the reasons I've laid out. you know, and but maybe not for everyone, depending on some of these things. If this is a good fit for you, to me it's perfect. Great if you're getting started. As I said, the cost of living is not that expensive. Also great if you're a bit more mature in it, like me, because you have access to a lot of great stuff and you can build a really incredible life out here. People are amazing, weather's great, lifestyle's great, so it definitely is one that is can be fantastic. So guys, if you enjoyed the video, hit the subscribe button and comment below what stage you're at. Maybe you're already in Bali and living the life. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're back in your home country, UK, Ireland, wherever that might be, and you're looking to make a move out here. I would love to hear from you. And yeah, so look.